It is on.
Welcome everyone to our weekly class in Sefer Higayon. We've, as we mentioned before, made the charts for Sefer Higayon a little more colorful, and with the aim of trying to clarify the Sefer as much as possible. The Ramchal's a master of organization, and one shouldn't miss that organization by getting lost in all the little trees and not seeing the whole forest. We're involved in the first section of the basic three sections of the Sefer. The first section, he's going to talk about concepts. Concepts is the bread and butter of Higayon, thoughts, and that's going to be his focus here, and we're in the third section of that section, which we'll speak about more in a second. The middle of the Sefer, the essence of the Sefer, really is when he's going to go through the logical process. He's going to break that down and explain all the details of the study of logic, from terms to statements to syllogisms. And finally, as he did in Funos, he's going to put it all together in a method of how to study and also how to teach. So those are the three basic units: concepts, the principles of logic, and then the method of using his Sefer. The first section is what we're dealing with, is learning about the atoms of thinking, which is really the thoughts that go on in our head. So he divides that into three different sections. The first is to explain that each thought has a certain source that it's trying to depict, it's trying to show, the source being either physical objects or the mind's intellectual perception of reality. The second part is where he explains that the different flavors that that concepts come into. You have essential concepts called the etzim, and then you have variables, things that these concepts go through. We can talk about their quantity, quality, their action, reaction, etc., etc. Once we understand our concepts, the Ramchal would like to teach us how to organize those concepts into a structural chart, as like the one we have in front of us, which is really the Ramchal's aim. After you've done your proper analysis and you're able to behold reality as Kodesh Baruch Hu created it, whether that's physical or an intellectual study, then you have to organize your ideas. So you need basic rules to use, which will give you terms to speak about reality, starting from the individuals and building yourself up into larger and larger units, as he's done in this chart in front of us. So today we're going to discuss those terms. That'll be the bottom part of the chart, and that will be his concluding discussion of the basis of concepts. So let's go right into the Sefer now. He says, after we've analyzed reality properly and we understand what is in front of us, what is called an etzem idea, the zach, as we said in Yiddish, or the thing in English, and what are we saying about it, what type of transitions can go through, what niklim happened to it. So now we want to put all that together. So what we do is we talk about pratim and coding, talk about details and their categories. Okay. Pratim hem hanimsoim kol echad b'fnei atzmo. Pratim are the individual units, the atoms of reality. Kugon, ish mina ish ha'ishin anashim, like a person in the category of people, or an oaf mina ofos, or particular bird in the category of fowl, or an elam, so a particular tree, like an oak tree or something, which is a particular in the category of trees. Those are the bottom of the atomic level of looking at reality. Those are the units that we'd like to discern, each one individually. With those units, we're going to build a coding. We'll make categories. There's two types of categories he's going to be talking about. The Rishon is the categorization of reality, and we said that could be physical or intellectual reality, like Sefer Gaon organizes. But the Sheni is Masigehem. Those are the distinctions that we're going to have to use to discern between one unit and the next, whether it be Yishim or Koglen. Those are distinctions. So we're going to have to learn about categorization, and we're going to have to learn about distinction. So let's do the first one. He breaks reality into two units. The first one is called the Sug, the kind, and this we said in English, and the second one is called the Min. The Min is the type. Okay, so you have the two categories, one larger than the other, one called the Sug, and one called a Min, which is the subcategory. Hasug v'hamin inyanim echad. They really are share a common quality. V'hu, what's the common quality between them? Hu klal kolel pratim mitzad shituv shehem mishutafim be'inyan echad. They are similar in that they capture or define many, many pratim, and those pratim have a certain shutaf, that's how to show it. They have a certain commonality, and that commonality is what will determine the categorical name, and or we say kind and type, the larger category, the Sug, and its subdivision called the Min. Now, the Hahefresh then Hasug Min. What is the difference between Sug and Min? Ramchal always defines his terms. He's a master of creating the term and defining the term. So what's the difference between the Sug and the Min, if they're both forms of categorization? Shema shekolel yoter yikore Sug. What is the larger unit, the larger category unit or class, that's called a Sug? Umasha eno kolel ela mixas mimasha niklal v'sug nikra Min. And the subcategory, which doesn't include everything in the larger category called the Sug, we're going to call that a Min. Okay, so that will be the relation. These are relative terms. The larger unit, the larger category, we're going to call the Sug, and the subcategory we'll always call the Min. Derech Mashal, he's going to give us a mashal. We have Balei Chayim, Hu Sug. Animals is a category, a categorical name. Sheniklalim b'zeh hachayos va'ofos v'hadagim u'bnei adam. They have all these minim in their unit called animals. Like we have birds and fish and people. They're all called animals. Now, why are they called animals? Why do we create this category called Balei Chayim, which is a Sug? Mitzad hashituf sheyesh behen be'inyan hachiyus, because they share one quality together, and that's the quality that they are living things, unlike rocks. So we put them together in the same category. Shekulam Chayim, since they all share the quality of life. Ach, Klal b'nei hadam yikore Sug. So the subcategory in the category of the animals is called man. Ki gam hu kolel kol ishi b'nei hadam, because he also includes a lot of particulars. He's not a unit. It's not Bill or John or Moshe. He's not one particular. He's also a categorical name, but he's just a subcategory of the category of man. And he's kolel a lot of particulars. Dahainu, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, etc. Ve'eno kolel hachayos va'ofos va'dagim. Of course, the subcategory of man does not include the larger partners called birds, dagim, sheniklalim b'shem balei chaim, which have the name of balei chaim. So the larger category is called sug, and its subcategory he's calling the min. So relative terms. And on the bottom of the scale, he mentioned before, we have the ishim, particular units. And that's the three-level unit, and it can go higher and higher, as we're going to see in 1 minute. Now, when we talk about the sug, he's masalek the sug into elyon, the emsoi, the sug elyon, and the sig and the sug emsoi, the greater sug and the intermediate sug, or the rachok v'karov, the distant and the near category. So that now when we make our chart, you'll see in 1 second, he's going to talk about the relative positions between the various units in the various categories and subcategories all the way down in our chart. What's the sug elyon? The sug elyon, hu ma she'ein sug acher alav. It's the highest classification in the pyramid, so to speak. Perish, okay, so it's the sug elyon huma she'ein sug acher alav. It's the largest category, and that means shekol yotem mimenu. It includes the most things. Sug elyon, the top part of the pyramid. What's the emsei? The means, the sug, which is the means. Hu sheyesh sug kolel mimenu. It's something that has a sug on top of it. Shalagabav yukore sug emsei min. So in relationship to the higher category, this subcategory is called a min. Ulagabe hamin shetachtov yukore sug. But since this is a emsei, it's a middle subcategory. So we have the major category, the elyon, A. Then we have this middle one, emsei, B. And under it we have another category called C. And then under that there'll be pratim, let's say. So anytime you're in the chart, we're going to call the highest classification the sug elyon. And we'll call anything between the sug elyon and other minim below the sug elyon, i.e., let's say we said there was B below A. B will be called emsei. If we have another subcategory called C, D, E, F, G, all the way down, all the ones in the middle we'll call emsei in relationship to one under it. So as long as we have one under it, one min under it, so we'll have all those will be relationship terms called intermediate classifications or subcategories. So the emsei hu sheyesh sug kolel mimenu, it's something that has a larger sug above it. Ulagabav yukore sug emsei min, and in relationship to any sug above it, the emsei will be called a min of that sug. Ulagabav min shetachtov yukore sug, and in relationship to the minim under it, this sug emsei will be called the sug. So these are relative terms to define our relationship between larger and greater categories. So that's to define the greatest category, the intermediate category, and then we'll have the bottom min, and these are all relative terms when we're talking about the relationship of each one to each other. What's rachok and what's karov? The sug rachok hu shirachok min hamin, the karov shikarov lo. Anything that's close to the next min will be called, excuse me, the sug rachok hu shirachok min. It's a level that's distant from the min above. In other words, has another min in the middle. But the karov is the immediate one above. So we can talk about classification as high, middle, or we can talk about it in distance. Teresho. The sug asug hu rachok min hamin. So, of course, the sug asug, the largest category, the sug of the sug, is always a step removed from the min. Ki yesh madrega cheres beino lemin. Since it has a madrega, a category in between it, but the one that's right above is, he'll call it the karov. Derech mashal. So he's going to dispel this out for us. Okay.
It sounds like he's describing biology. They call it the genus, the phylum, the right, all the different levels.
Exactly. This is exactly what he's doing. And if you notice, that's his aim. I mean, if you look at our chart over here, all these charts are organizational charts. And they show you the relationship of things. Now, there'll be two types of charts. Some will tell us parts, but others will tell us subcategories. For instance, we had Kinyan. Kinyan has three. Well, actually, but those were divisions. So, for instance, here, if the class of Malachti, right? So he broke it into two subcategories called Chovshi and Lo Chovshi, the liberal arts and the non-liberal arts, the people who have to work, so to speak. And he broke this liberal arts into people the study of grammar and logic and rhetoric and practical arts into sewing, construction, weaving. Of course, there's just examples of, but those are subcategories of Kinyan. Okay, so what his aim is not to in whatever you're studying, whether it's logic or you're studying Mishnayos, or you're studying Seif Halacha, or you're studying science and mathematics. His aim is to organize thinking so that you can create this structural organizational chart, okay, much like a Rambam did, or much like the Mishnah tries to do. But the Mishnah is much more interesting than a simple organizational chart because there's a dynamic relationship in each one of them. That's the whole of the study. But basically what the Ramchal is trying to do is organize reality. And it doesn't really matter what facet of reality either. So that's why he wants to use his quote-unquote biological system. But if you have a business, you do the same thing, or you're studying mathematics, you want to do the same thing also. That's a clear way of presentation. So he doesn't want to have little units flying all over the place in an unstructured form, but he's trying to label or discuss the process of organization and how we get to it. So we're going to have to understand how we view units, Yishim, as he explained, and what's called a mikra, and he'll get more involved in those classifications in a second. But we have to review the units of reality, and we have to start building structures. That's one of the things that really, I think, is distinguished advanced societies from primitive societies, is the ability to organize. So, yeah, it happens in biology, but it happens in everything that we look at. Okay, that's organized on a higher level than just, planting and low-level reality. Okay, so he wants to give names to these things, okay, to these categories, and also show the relationships of each one. So now let's look at his Derek Mashal. For instance, you have the good old Tarnagol, you have that rooster there. Hu min mimine ophos. Tarnagol is a type of bird. Oph, hu sub lemine ophos. bird, the category of bird, is the sug, which includes many different minim, right? Tanago is only one. The chicken family, we have the owl family, and we have the eagle family. We have all those minim, but all those minim come together and they share certain qualities and create this sug called ophot. Now we look at a higher level, and we're going to call that sug hasug, the highest level that we can create from this structure is called Balei Chayim. That's the highest level because they'll all have that quality of life. So that's called the sug hasug. And the Tarnagol is called the sug rechok. So the sug hasug, on top, he wants to call Balei Chayim. And since there's a distance between Balei Chayim and our little chicken over there, or the fowl, let's say, nicer word. So since there's a middle group there, he would like to call that the sug. The Tarnagol is the sug rechok, and the Oaf Nikra Sug Kurov. I'm sorry, let's go again. Tarnagol hu minim Ophos, the chicken family, the fowl family, is one of the chicken family is one of the bird family, in the bird family, and the chicken family is made up of the sug of the chicken family is called Ophos, birds, and Balei Chayim is above that. That's the sug hasug. So he says, Balei Chayim hu sug hasug litarnagol shenikra sug rechok. Exactly. The tarnagol, since it has the bird family in the middle, is called the sug rechok. So here we have the Balei Chayim hu sug hasug litarnagol shenikra sug rechok. So here's our three units. We have the Balei Chayim, we have the Oaf unit, and on the bottom we have the Tarnagol, okay, the chicken unit. So he calls the Balei Chayim, he wants to call that the sug rechok, and the Oaf would be a sug karov because it's one level down, and the Tarnagol is the min. So you have on the bottom level the min, one step above he wants to call the sug rechok, that's immediately above it, and anything above that is the sug rechok because it's distant, meaning that there's some intermediary sug. Good. So that's his classification. Okay. Now he's going to tell us some rules about sug. Hasug gadol mikol min umein shenachtav. Okay. The sug, of course, is larger than any of them. So you're making a categorical class instead, whether that's biological or trying to arrange halachas, you have to categorize things properly. So the sug will be the larger than any of the min underneath it. Perishok. Now, sug hu mashikol minim harbe. A sug is a grouping of a lot of minim. So of course it has to be greater than the minim. Hasug eino mipared miminav. Whenever you have the sug, you can't separate the sug from the minav. As I'm going to explain, since it's the minim create the sug. So whenever you have the sug, you want to have all those minim. Perisho. Ki eino sug el hachok haklali hashaveh minav. What is sug? Making a class just means that you're taking a common quality in all those particular types and building a class. So of course, so anything that has comes, you can say about the sug, you'll have to say about the class. So anything I say about Balei Chayim, for instance, will be equally applicable to anything under that class. Okay, so if I have in Baba Kama our Avos and Toldos, so anything I say about the Avos to be saying about the Toldos also, as far as the din is concerned, unless we, which is the original Gemara's question, unless it's not a categorical class, it's based on a Siba, for instance. But that's what we discussed over there. But generally, the rule is like this. Since a sug is only created through a common quality of all the elements, so then anything that happens to the sug is going to happen to all those minim. Anything we say about life will be equally applicable to man, bird, and animal. But you have to be careful. It's only that quality that put them all together which will be shared. Okay, man and animal will have different qualities, but as far as the sug of Bali Chaim, whatever we say about Bali Chaim should be equally applicable to all the minim.
Is he going to discuss anywhere? I guess it's just, it depends why you're making the class or making the sug, but how many things should everything in that class have in common in order to be called a class? I mean, because you could say anything that that is soft, and create a class of things that are soft, and then everything, you could take anything that's soft in it and put it into that class and have a class theoretically. Maybe wouldn't have a purpose in doing so, because then it doesn't organize anything. So
exactly. Or it may though. It may though. And that's exactly the point. We're talking about the general rules. Whatever study you're involved with, different elements may be important in creating that organizational chart. Okay, so softness may be important if you're talking about how detergents work, for instance. Maybe they work on soft things and not on hard things. Okay, or you're talking about driving nails on things. Maybe it'd be easier to use driving nails to soft things and hard things. Or so those qualities that you're talking about, soft, hard. He's going to talk about them in general. Those mikrim that units have can be significant depending upon what grouping you're talking about. Okay, in the Zikin, you'll have the shore-bore mountain heaven. We're going to organize reality according to certain pulot or lack of pulot that they do. Or so to answer your question, it really depends upon what you're trying to organize. What mikrim are going to be important. Okay, and of course we're not going to organize things according to a mikra without any tachlis, okay, without any purpose. So when we're talking about any study, we're going to try to find the significant factor that's going to be used to put those things together. Okay? So this is just the general rules of organization, but the application will change according to what we're trying to organize. Okay, so the sug ain't a mitpar min, but it's very important that once we do create a class of things, so whatever happens to the sug, we're going to say should happen to the min. That's why if we say that the abos and tolos and the zikin share certain qualities, that they're subcategories of each other. Let's say the shore, has three categories: the Karen, Shem, and the Rego, and the Karen has another set of subcategories called Be'ita, and kicking and squatting on things. So whatever we say about any of the higher units will always apply to the lower units. Okay, so if the Karen, which is he'll get into naming in a second also, but if that's a categorical unit, so we can say anything listed under that class will have the same din, for instance. Okay, so mash yikori l'sug yikori l'kol min. Oh, I'm sorry. The first rule is that whenever you have, they can't be separated. So whenever you have the sug, then you're going to have all the minim. That's the second rule. Okay, a sug ain't a mipar minav, since it's made up of it, which means whenever you say that there's a sug, so then you're going to have the minim. Ki ein hasug el hachok hakol el hashav minav v'nimsash iv shal shum min lios bli hachok hazeh. Okay, so the minute you say that there's a sug here, which was only made up of the minim, you're going to have to immediately say all the minim come in. If I say the avos, then all those tolos have to appear. Here's what I skipped a step. Mashi kori l'sug yikori l'kol min. And once they do have a relationship of category and subcategory, so then anything that happens to the category is going to happen to the subcategory. That's interesting. That's really what I said. The first one was when you have the sug, then behechach you're going to have all the minim. Ubeheder asug nehedarim kulam. And when you remove the sug, so then all the minim, of course, are going to go also. So the question is, what's the difference between that and the first one? The second one, I'm sorry. That the sug is eno mitpared mimeno. What's the difference between that? He says the sug never separates from the min. And here he says when you affirm the sug, so then you're going to have the min. I don't understand really, unless throw it out to you guys, what really the significance of those two things. It seems to be saying the same thing. Okay, they're inseparable, and of course, so when you predicate one, you're going to predicate the other ones. Okay, or if you get rid of the I'm sorry. Okay, or if you get rid of the sug, you'll get rid of the min. Okay, let's leave that for. I'm gonna have to think about that. Really, what's the difference between the second one and the fourth one here?
Oh, I guess we'll have to find we'll have to find a case that you could understand a min, which is part of a sug, and then understand what it means to have them in without the sug. I have to need some thought. Definitely need some thought.
Okay. Yeah, he says they're inseparable because they're inseparable because one created the other one. So okay, here he's saying, so I guess if they're inseparable, so then you just have to be aware that the affirmation of the sug is going to be the affirmation of the minim, and the denial of the sug will mean the denial of the minim. Okay, if there's Balei Chaim here, so all the Balei Chaim have to be involved, or else you should use the term Balei Chaim. It's not really all the animals here. Okay, if there are no Balei Chaim here, you wouldn't expect any of them around either. Okay, so they're connected, and which means their affirmation or denial have to be mukhrach. Okay, slight difference, but you think about that more deeply. What's the klali of the min? He says the min is nolad mi higovel hasug al yidei eza hevdel shebehen nivchan min mimin acher. He says the min is created from the definition of the sug, and it has ayidei eza hevdel shebehen nivchan min mimin acher, and it has also a hevdel, a difference between each min. So he's going to explain that derech mashal. Let's let him spell it out. The sug of Balei Chaim yivoled min ha'adam b'chaber elav hevdel hadibur. The sug of Balei Chaim, of animals, was created by one of the subcategories called man. However, man himself is distinct from the other minim in the sug. V'nema Bal Chai medaber. So whenever you talk about the min, you always talk about two things. You talk about its relationship to the class. So a human being is in the category of Balei Chaim. It's a living thing. But you always talk about its distinction. What distinguishes the human being from the birds and the other animals is its quality of dibur. So a min always has a relationship to the class, a sad hashava, that it's a commonality to the class, but it also has a particular distinction which makes it different than the other minim of the class, and that's why it makes it a unique min. So if we have the category of Karen, for instance, that's a category. So there'll be Ve'ita and Revitza. Those are minim. That means the animal is kicking or he squats, for instance. Those are minim that makes up the category of Kavanah Lahazik, which we call Karen. But each one has its unique quality. It has a certain common quality called Kavanah Lahazik, but each one has a unique quality. It has Kavanah Lahazik, but it uses its foot by kicking. It has Kavanah Lahazik, it uses its body by squatting. It has Kavanah Lahazik using its horn for poking. So there's always in the min two things that we have to consider. We have to consider its common quality that it shares with the class, and its unique quality that separates it from the other minim in the class. So that's the first thing. It's born from the class, but it has a important distinction from the other members of the class. That's the first general rule of the min. The min is miyucha b'teva el sugo. In teva, the min comes after the sug. I think he means intellectual teva. When we organize things, so the min is a subcategory. We call it a subcategory of the sug, so it's considered a level below. Keshyunach min behechach hasug. If you have one of the minim, then you should have the rest. So if you have one of the Balei Chaim, so then you should have all of them there. Keshyunach min behechach. If you have one of the minim of Balei Chaim, you could say the Balei Chaim are there. Okay, not all of them, but at least you have the category Balei Chaim exists there. Ubeheder min echad ein heder hasug mukhrach. But if one of the Balei Chaim are not there, you still can have Balei Chaim there. So if I have a room and I say there's Balei Chaim here, there's animals here, so it doesn't mean that all the animals have to be there, but it has to be that there are things in there with a common quality called animal. Now, we're going to need this quite a lot because not only are we Ramchal is trying to organize things properly, but when we deal, for instance, in syllogisms, categorical syllogisms, we're going to be playing with these ideas, okay, which is the affirmation of the klal or denial. But what he's saying here is that he's trying to explain to us the relationship of the min to the sug and what happens here when you say that there are Balei Chaim in the room. So when you say when there's animals in the room, you don't mean that they're all the subcategories of animals. All you mean, but you do have to have some of the minim there. They can't be just rocks in the room. Okay.
Well, going back to number 2, he probably means to say in number 2 that a min mu'ucha b'teva al sugai, that if there's no sug before it, then it's not a min, then it's a sug. Right?
He's trying to just here. Not if there's without one is not another. Here he's trying to explain. No, I'll take it back. What I understand was the teva b'sichli, as we learned in Tunas. But
no, it does mean teva b'sichli. But he's describing here how do you identify a min. One of its identifying factors is it's mu'ucha b'teva al sugai, that it has to come. That it has to come after a sug. So if it doesn't come after a sug, then it's not a min. It's a sug. What else is it?
It could be an she too. No, it could be a prat also. It could be.
Yeah, but wouldn't the prat have to be part of a min, and a min would have to be part of a sug?
Theoretically, you can have one prat that has no min. I mean, theoretically. not everyone.
Oh, he's saying that you could look at a detail, and that detail could be lower down in the chain, and therefore wouldn't be a min, it would be a prat. Okay, I could hear that.
Okay, it just means lower down the chain. That's what I think, right?
Right.
The min is lower down the chain than the sug in Teva.
Well, I mean, the other way to look at it is you could say if the min is on top of the chain, it's not a min either, it's a sug.
Right.
Or something else, or, yeah, right. That's
Exactly. So, exactly.
And a number 3, so, you described it with rooms, but also let's say heder min echad ein heder sug muchrach. I mean, you could also say, okay, if it's not a chicken, doesn't mean that it's not a Baal Chai. It could be a Baal Chai, but it could not be a chicken. It could be a parrot. So that would be, right? Would that be like an example without also of describing heder min echad ein heder sug muchrach? No, I'm not understanding. Okay, so I have to say examples.
I think he's trying to talk about the room, and not about a particular quality, a particular item. Okay, that's how I understand it. Okay, so you could say that there's Bali Chaim here, and it doesn't mean that all Bali Chaim have to be here, but some Bali Chaim have to be here, and then that would be true. I could say there's Bali Chaim in the room, and not every unit in the world, not every Baal Chai has to be there, because just those units that have that common quality of Baal Chai have to be there, but not all the Baal Chai in the world. I mean, that's what he wants to say here. Okay, so now the important part here is he's going to now talk about distinctions. When we create these units of categories and subcategories, we're going to have to make distinctions between each one of the dragas. How do you make distinctions? So he's going to talk about 3 types of distinctions. The misigay hakolim shlosha, to define these different units, whether they're sub or min, you're going to have to talk about 3 distinguishing qualities. One is called the hevdel, that's the difference. One is called the segula, that's called a non-essential difference, and a micro, which is a temporal difference. He's going to explain all these things. What's the hevdel? A hevdel hu inyan atzmi'i shebo yibochanu ze mizeh. It's an essential difference that will make a distinction between one item and the next. Shnayim sheyesh lahem shituf b'sug o l'min. Any 2 things that have a common quality in the sug or the min. So let's say we have our category of shore, for instance. Okay, so we have to know what's the essential difference between the Karen, the Shane, and the Regel. And the Gemara goes out of its way to define those differences. Okay, the Karen, they're all part of the masik called shore, but they're different in that the Karen, for instance, has kavanah lahazik, the Shane has hanor lahazik, and the Regel will have hazik matzui. So that's the essential difference that will define the difference between each one of the minim. Nimsa hasug v'hamin modim me atzmus hanimsa ma shishutaf bo imzuasto. So the reality of this sugamin of any group always tells you about the essential quality of all the items in it. So they have animal, so we know that all the items in the group of animal will share Balei Chaim, for instance, so that they're living, okay, the animal world. Okay. Ahevdel modia mimenu ma shi'bodel mizuaso. So the sug, or the min, the category class, will always talk about the common quality, but the hevdel will talk about the difference. Derech mashal, adam v'behema mishutafim b'chiyus. The common quality that made up the category of Balei Chaim was the quality of life. So we took man and we took behemos, and we said there's a common quality between them, and we made the category of life. But the hevdel, the difference between ha'adam min ha'behema hu medaber. The essential quality that separates each min, in this case, will be speech. Or in that case, in Baba Kama, the Nezikin, the quality that separates each one of the Nezikin of Shor will be Kavano, or I say Matsui or Hano. Now, those may have nafkaminas, but they all share the quality that you have to pay for damage, but there'll be differences where with common mood are the same, etc., etc., etc. So we always have to be aware of the common quality which created the sub and the significant factor which separates each min from its friend, because those significant factors will mean that between each min, different things may be going on. Pratiginim may change, even though they share this common quality called life. It's only in the common quality that the same things will be happening to all the min. But you can't say that just because man is an animal and a lion is an animal, and a lion can speak, of course, because it doesn't share that quality in its categorical unit. Okay. V'nikra Adam Bal Chai Medaber. So now we define the human as a min of Bal Chai, but he's separated from all the other minim because of this quality of Medaber. It's called the Hevdel. And the Hema is called a Bal Chai Bilti Medaber, and the unit of the Hemot don't have that quality that man has. It has the common quality of Baal Chai, being an animal, but it has a significant difference that it cannot speak. So that's called the Hevdel. The Hevdel is the significant difference between each one of the types. Klalia Hevdel. A Hevdel hu inyan atzmi. It's an essential difference. Miyuchad, unique. The sug o the minam, depending on which level you are. It's the unique quality that separates this category from all the other units, whether you have all the minim that are different, or this category makes up a larger sugasug, but whenever you have units together, they have a tzad mishutaf, and they always have a tzad that makes them different. Okay, it's not a shavish band, a shidakam hazik, but they also have different qualities that go on in the dinim in between each one. V'nimtza bo the rubo ubecholzman. This hedel is an essential difference, will be there in most of the time, okay, and most of the items. So that's gives there much. Hadibru atzmi lemin hadam. The significant difference called speech is an essential difference in separating quality of man from other items in Baal Chaim. Shezulaso lo yehe adam. Without this quality, you are not called a man. V'nimsa barov hamin b'kol. It's found in most men most of the time. You could have people that can't speak, okay, but that's an exception. So generally, the quality of speech is found in most human beings. What is a segula? So that's the essential difference called the Hevdel. We always have to have Dimion and Hevdel to define our class. The Dimion will be the Sad Shutaf, and the Hevdel is the difference that it has between the other units on its own level. What's the segula? Who Hevdel Bilti Atzmi. Now, a segula is also a difference that exists between any of the subcategories, any of the minim, or any of the categories if there's a higher category above. But what's the difference between it? It's a Hevdel. It's also, but it's not. But it's called Bilti Atzmi. It's called a non-essential difference. Dahainu. Shemodia me hanimsa ma shenivchan bozula. So it is a quality that separates this min from the other minim in its class. Ach eino me'atzmuso, but it's not talking about an essential difference. He'll give an example. Derek Marshall. Schok lemin adam. When we talk about laughter, That is a quality of man. The quality of laughter doesn't exist in any other animal, although they say hyenas laugh, they're just making a noise. They're not really doing the idea. He's not having a good time. No one's just told him a good joke. He just makes a funny sound like that. Okay, so the only Baal Chai that laughs is called man. Ach eino me'atzmusa, but it's not an essential quality. Ki ein hiyos adam tolui b'zeh. The concept of man doesn't depend upon laughing or not. It depends upon whether he can speak or not. He'll think. Shebelo zeh haya adam. Okay, even if a man doesn't have the quality of laughter, conceptually, you'd still say he's a man. So there's certain qualities that a man has, for instance, his unique form, maybe his physical form, but that may not be what we would label an essential quality. Okay, the softness of his skin is a unique quality, but it's not an essential quality. So he makes a difference in Hevdelim that any min has from the other between an essential one, Hevdel, and a skula, which is a difference that the other min don't have, but you wouldn't call that the essential difference. So that's called the skula. Okay. Now, when we're talking about any unit, it could be, like for instance, halacha, that all of a sudden a segula of a min comes into play to be important. Okay, but he's just trying to show the relationship between the etzem item and these variables that are attached to it. Okay, so certain differences are essential and certain are non-essential, even though they may be different. What's the klali ha-segula? What are the general rules of segula? Ha-segula miyuchedes b'min over sug. It is a quality that makes it different than any other of the categories that it's shutaf with. V'nimsa beruba b'kolzman. It's found in most of its most of the units there. Most men laugh. Ubecholzman all the time. This means laughing all the time, but yeah, he has the ability to laugh all the time. The eino atzmis bo, but it's a difference that's not called an essential difference. It is a difference, but it's not an essential difference. What's a mikra? Hu inyan hanimsa bilti miyuchat bo bilti atzmi bo. So the third type of distinction is called the mikra, and it's not at all peculiar to that particular min, and it's not talking, of course, about its etzim. So whether a man is squatting, for instance, an animal could squat also. So it's a mikra. It's just something happens, but animals also squat, or a man can do damage, and an animal can do damage. Okay, maybe, but it's just something. It's not talking about the essential quality of man. They're just talking about action that he may do. The mikra hu inyan nimsa bilti miyucha bo bilti atzmo. Klali mikra. What is his general rules about mikra? Mikra nimsa b'miyut hasug o hamin. It's found in a minority of times in the sug. Okay, the idea that a person is sitting or damaging or kicking something doesn't happen all the time. V'lo b'kolzman doesn't happen in the whole sug, let's say, and for instance, the color of its hair, for instance. So, not all human beings have white hair or brown hair or black hair. And that's the first one. It's found in a minority of the sug, and also it's not there all the time. We said doing damage to something is happening partially. The eno atzmi, well, the most important thing is not atzmi. It's not an essential quality. Sharniyim ha-mikrin is lamala, and he talked about all the mikrin before, you know, the zman, the matzah, the kinyan, the ona, you know, in general, okay? So what he's saying is we have to make a distinction between, when we make our categorization, we always have to talk about essential differences, and we have to talk about non-essential differences. And when we categorize things, it could be that a mikra is important. Okay, so for instance, the mikra in the unit of a human being of a pleasant voice may be important when it comes to the lachas of chazanot. Okay, so we have to understand when we're making our categories, and we're trying to distinguish things from each other, it could be that mikra could be very, very important. Okay, so we're not talking about its significance in any relationship. Okay. Okay, so he basically talks about the etzem, and here the essential differences, which is what's going to separate one min from the next, and then we have non-essential differences, which don't separate minim for each other. They could be mishutaf in many minim. The fact that a man runs can be equal to all the other Malichaim in the class. And then we have certain skulos, which is in the middle. A skula is definitely a unique quality, but it's not essential quality like the laughter that exists in man. So that's his general discussion of categorization. Okay, we spoke about the various levels of categorization, the sug hasug or the sug adyon. We talked about relationship positions between things, and we now in the distinctions we talked about the tzad mishutaf, the common qualities that each min has, which creates the sug, and we talked about their differences. Okay, so that's a basic introduction to making organizational charts, and in the specific areas that we'll be talking with, it may be that our organizational charts will line things up differently. Okay, and for instance, in the Zikin, we're going to have to discern what is the essential difference between Keren, Shea, and Regel. Okay, it may not be so apparent. So the Gemara has to spell it out, or will have to understand it. In order to understand how to make further subcategories of a unit called Regel, we're going to have to understand what is that essential quality, so that we'll be able to now categorize all sorts of damage under that unit. Okay, and that could be machlokas, etc., etc. But basically, he's showing us here the basic rules of the organizational structure.
Can I ask a question?
Okay. Yes, you can ask all the questions. I hope I can have the answers, but you can ask the questions. How are you doing, Dustin?
I obviously see that there's going to be very nogea when it comes to syllogisms, but I had a question specifically in it comes klape kal v'chomer. We said one of the ways in which one can disprove a kal v'chomer, as it were, is by showing that the two are really not the same, as it were. Is that doing basically specifically in the not in Mikra? Are those also in Mikra and Seguras, or is it only going to be in the thing itself?
I think the answer to that question is it depends. Okay, when you break a kal v'chomer and you say things are not similar, okay, so it doesn't mean that you can take in other words, if the relationship is not based on this mikra, for instance,
right?
So then you can't use another mikra to break the kal v'chomer.
Right.
Even, you know what I'm saying?
But
so
it could be done. Say something that happens to be a seitige zach to the etzem zach. It's still you in theory.
If it's significant, you always have to have the significant factor. Whether it's a segula may be significant too. Laughter may be significant in a certain din. Okay, you're not allowed to laugh in a base kvaros, for instance. You know what I mean? It's inappropriate. But so when the most difficult thing is discerning the proper dimun and heftel. Matter of fact, he calls that the essential work of the mind, because there's a lot of differences. And in any particular world that you're in, a mikra or a segula or an etzem can be essential. So you talk about kal v'chomers, it depends which things you're trying to relate to each other, and then the difference also has to be some significance. It can't just be totally unique, totally different. Okay, so you'll say, wait, Okay, so that's the answer to the question. Again, these are the general principles. That's why this book is so significant, because it tells us all the technical rules, the general technical rules. So when you want to build your kal vachomer, at least you know you have two subjects that have a relationship of kal vachomer, and you know what the gedarim are. But in any particular case now, you're going to have a lot of problems. I have to now discern what is the significant difference, and they may be tremendous. There probably will be big arguments about it. Okay, so we're not. This is another thing I must mention. A lot of people, not a lot, many people think that learning these books is a magic pill to understanding. It's not. What it does is it clarifies certain rules for your mind to think. But in the actual nigdar, in the actual thing that you're thinking about, you're going to have to be very careful in discovering the principles that will be relevant in any one situation. I like to talk about halacha. So in Bishul and Shabbos may have a different gather than Bishul in Basar B'Chalav, for instance. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful when you're categorizing things or putting things or making comparisons of things, that they really do go together and not just seemingly go together. Okay, so that's the work, but at least we have a formal structure to deal with. The nigdar will be problematic because that's what learning is about. We're going to have to find proofs and things like that, but at least we have the basic structure that things that concepts come in. Okay, so I think that's the end of this chapter. Nassim, did you get the Visio chart? You can also we can send you the Visio chart, and you don't need Visio to use it. You can get a reader. It's a good thing to have. The book is very good, also excellent. I mean, the charts that we made. I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible using the colors and having the room to spread out, which I didn't have when we created the original charts. Okay, so this just to conclude the class. Now, this is going to be the end of our discussion of musagim. Okay, we spoke about where they come from. We spoke about essential ones and nikrim, and now we spoke about organizing them. Okay, into sug and min, and also how to distinguish the subcategories from each other through the Havdalah school and the mikra. So the next week, B'ezras Hashem, will be off into discussing the second part, which is Chelkei Higayon, which is the study of logic itself, how it's going to now organize these units and speak about them with certain specific language that we're going to learn. And in other words, the relationship between any of these nimsaim in reality and any of these we have in reality will have certain basic ways that we talk about them. We talk about their causes, we talk about their parts, we talk about their definitions, etc., etc. So that will be our next discussion. Okay, and we'll say, if there's no more questions, we'll say Shavua Tov, and a wonderful week to everybody.
Okay.